The day everything changed, have you ever had one of those moments where a simple act of kindness completely shifts your world? Well, let me tell you about the day I learned that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. The sound that came from my mouth wasn't pretty, more like a dying animal than a human being. But honestly, can you blame me? The tower of boxes in my arms was swaying like a drunk person at a wedding. And I was pretty sure gravity was about to win this battle. Moving, why did I think this was a good idea again? Every single box felt like someone had filled it with rocks instead of my old photo albums and those kitchen tools I never used. You know, the ones, that fancy garlic press that seemed so important at the store but ended up buried in a drawer for 5 years. I had made the big decision to downsize after my kids finally flew the coop for good. They were off living their own adventures in different cities, probably eating cereal for dinner and forgetting to call their mom. This new apartment was definitely smaller than my old place. But it had something special, an amazing view of the park that made my heart sing every time I looked out the window. Yesterday, I had conquered the big stuff. The moving guys had wrestled my couch and bed into place, grunting and sweating like they were moving pianos instead of furniture. But all my personal things. That was my job, and boy, was I regretting that decision now. The pile of boxes in my old apartment seemed to grow every time I turned around. It was like they were breeding when I wasn't looking. Books, clothes, random kitchen gadgets, old letters, 30 years of life packed into cardboard containers. I wobbled toward the elevator, praying with every step that I wouldn't drop everything. The last thing I needed was to explain to my neighbors why there were broken dishes scattered across the hallway floor. Please. I thought as I tried to reach the elevator button with my elbow, please don't let Mrs. Henderson be in there with her little white poodle. That dog barked at everything. Leaves, shadows, his own reflection. I just couldn't handle that kind of chaos right now. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. And I held my breath. No Mrs. Henderson. No yapping dog. Just Mark. Mark from apartment 4A. Well, he used to live in 4A. We'd been neighbors for about 6 months, but we'd never really talked. You know how it is in apartment buildings? You see the same faces in the lobby, maybe hold a door open, share an awkward smile by the mailboxes. Polite but distant. It's like dancers who know the steps but never actually dance together. He was probably about 10 years younger than me, with the kind of height that made you feel safe just being near him. His eyes were kind, the sort that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which wasn't often, but when it happened, it was genuine. He always seemed quiet, thoughtful, usually carrying a paperback book wherever he went. I'd see him sometimes in the lobby, reading while he waited for the elevator or by the mailboxes, completely absorbed in whatever story had captured his attention. There was something peaceful about him, like he carried his own little bubble of calm wherever he went. He looked up from his phone when the doors opened. I saw surprise flicker across his face before it settled back into that calm expression he always wore. His eyes took in my situation, the leaning tower of boxes, the look of pure panic on my face, the tiny beads of sweat on my forehead despite the building's air conditioning working overtime. Need some help with that? He asked, and his voice was deeper than I remembered from our brief hallway encounters. It was smooth and warm like honey in tea on a cold morning. Now, normally I would have said no. I'm one of those people who always says I'm fine, just managing even when I'm clearly drowning. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's not wanting to bother anyone, or maybe it's just that voice in my head that says I should be able to handle everything myself. But today was different. Today, looking at the mountain of boxes still waiting in the hallway outside my old apartment, my stubbornness just melted away like ice cream in summer. "Oh, Mark," I said, and I could hear the relief in my own voice that would be absolutely wonderful. "I swear these boxes have been multiplying when I'm not looking." He smiled then, a real smile that reached his eyes, and tucked his phone into his back pocket. "No problem at all, Sarah. Moving is the absolute worst thing in the world. He stepped forward and easily lifted the top two boxes from my wobbling stack. His movements were smooth and sure, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. But the weight that had been making my arms shake was nothing to him. "I'm in 5C now," I said, leading the way as we stepped into the elevator together. "Lead the way," he replied simply. The elevator ride up was quiet, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of comfortable silence you share with an old friend, filled only with the gentle hum of the machinery carrying us upward. I found myself noticing little things about him that I'd never paid attention to before. The way his dark hair curled just slightly where it met his neck. The faint smell of sandalwood mixed with coffee that seemed to follow him like a pleasant cloud. The strength in his hands as he held my boxes steady, making it look effortless. He wasn't movie star handsome, not the kind of guy you'd see on magazine covers. But there was something solid about him, something that made you feel like he was the kind of person you could count on. Like if you called him at 3 in the morning with a flat tire, he'd show up with jumper cables and wouldn't make you feel bad about it. My new apartment, 5C, was right across the hall from where he used to live. Funny how life works. Sometimes we've been playing musical apartments without even realizing it. He'd mentioned moving upstairs a few weeks ago when we bumped into each other by the recycling bins. But I hadn't really processed what that meant. Until now. He followed me inside, placing the boxes carefully against the wall where I pointed. The living room looked like a disaster zone, furniture covered in white sheets like ghosts. Boxes stacked everywhere, dust dancing in the beams of sunlight streaming through the big window. It felt empty and unfinished, kind of like how I'd been feeling about my own life lately. "Wow," I said, waving my hand at the cardboard city that had taken over my living space. "I think I might have seriously underestimated what I was getting myself into here." He chuckled, and the sound was surprisingly warm and rich. "It always looks like a disaster before it gets better. Trust me, I've moved more times than I can count. Where do you want to start?" And just like that, he was part of my moving day. Adventure. We spent the next hour and a half carrying boxes from the hallway into the apartment. He worked like a machine, steady, efficient, never complaining even once. His presence was strangely calming in the middle of all the chaos swirling around me. He didn't try to fill every moment with chatter, which I appreciated. Some people feel like they need to talk constantly, but Mark seemed comfortable with quiet. When he did speak, it was to ask practical questions. Kitchen stuff goes here, or bedroom boxes upstairs? He listened carefully to my mumbled directions and remembered everything I told him. There was a rhythm to our work. Lift, carry, set down, go back for more. In the narrow hallway, our arms would brush against each other as we passed, and each time it happened, I felt a tiny, unexpected jolt of electricity. It wasn't anything inappropriate or over the top, just ... noticeable. It's like a reminder that I was still alive, still capable of feeling something other than tired or lonely. The atmosphere between us was shifting, slowly but surely, from polite neighbor help to something warmer, more connected. It was subtle, like the way morning gradually becomes afternoon. You don't notice it happening until suddenly everything looks different. He picked up a particularly heavy box marked books, like it weighed nothing at all, setting it down gently near the bookshelf I'd already assembled. "Looks like we have similar taste in reading," he said, nodding toward a worn copy of a Steinbeck novel that was peeking out from the top of the box. That small comment, that simple connection over a shared author, felt like the first crack in a wall I hadn't even realized I'd built around myself over the past few years. It was such a little thing, but it made me feel seen in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. The afternoon stretched out like taffy, golden and warm. The initial awkwardness I'd felt about needing help had completely disappeared, replaced by genuine gratitude for his kindness and something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. We kept working steadily, the pile in the hallway shrinking as the stacks inside my apartment grew taller. Mark seemed tireless, his quiet energy a perfect balance to my own growing exhaustion. Every now and then we'd chat about small things. He told me about his job doing data analysis for some company downtown, which sounded complicated but important. I shared a few stories about my kids and why I decided to move. The conversation flowed naturally. It's like water finding its way. Downhill. No forced small talk, no awkward pauses that made you scramble for something to say. Just to people getting to know each other while doing something that needed to be done. "'Kay?" he announced, setting down one final oddly shaped box that contained lampshades and probably a few other random things I'd thrown in at the last minute. "I think that's everything from the hallway." He wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a small smudge of dust that somehow made him look more real, more human. "Mark," I said, leaning against the doorframe and suddenly feeling every muscle in my body complain about the day's work. "I honestly don't know how to thank you." I would have been here until midnight, probably crying into a box of old tax returns. He laughed again, that warm, easy sound that was quickly becoming one of my favorite things about him. "Happy to help, Sarah. Besides," he added, glancing around, "at my box-filled living room, it looks like the real adventure is just getting started." "Don't remind me," I groaned dramatically. "Unpacking is like my personal Mount Everest right now. But I think I need to hydrate before I tackle that mountain. Can I offer you something? Water, iced tea, maybe something stronger." I think I managed to unearth a bottle of wine somewhere in that kitchen disaster zone. He thought about it for a moment, tilting his head slightly. "Water would be perfect, thanks. It's surprisingly hot work, even with the air conditioning." I navigated the obstacle course of boxes to get to the kitchen, carefully stepping around stacks and searching through containers until I found glasses and the pitcher of water I'd thankfully filled earlier that morning. Poured two tall glasses, adding ice cubes that clinked cheerfully against the sides. I could feel his eyes on me, not in a creepy way, more like he was curious about me, maybe trying to figure out who I was, beyond just the neighbor who needed help moving boxes. When I turned around to hand him his glass, our fingers brushed again. Lingering for just a moment longer than necessary, that little spark of electricity was back. Warmer this time, more noticeable. "Thanks," he said, taking a long drink. I watched his Adam's apple move as he swallowed and found myself oddly fascinated by such a simple, human thing. "Get it together, Sarah," I told myself. "He's just being nice. Don't read too much into it." "Looking for a safe topic?" I asked. "So you moved up from 4A, right? How are you liking the 5th floor so far?" "It's good," he replied, leaning casually against my kitchen counter like he belonged there. "Definitely quieter up here, and the view is a bit better, less blocked by that huge oak tree out front." He gestured toward my window. "You've got an amazing view of the park from here." That was the main selling point, I admitted, walking over to the window to look out at the scene below. The late afternoon sun was casting long golden shadows across the green grass. People were strolling along the winding paths. Dogs were chasing frisbees and tennis balls. And a young couple sat close together on one of the benches, completely absorbed in each other. It looked peaceful and perfect, like a painting of how life should be after 30 years in the suburbs, surrounded by fences and privacy hedges. "I really wanted openness," I continued. "I wanted to be able to see life happening, you know." "Completely understand that," he said, coming to stand beside me at the window, not too close, but near enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Smell that pleasant combination of sandalwood and coffee that seemed to be his signature scent. We stood there together in comfortable silence, watching the world go by outside my new window, and I realized that for the first time in months, felt hopeful. Like maybe this new chapter of my life was going to be better than I'd dared to imagine. Radiating from him sometimes a change of scenery is more than just geography, his words resonated deeply. This move wasn't just about square footage, it was about cheating an old skin, figuring out who Sarah was now that she wasn't primarily mom or wife. It was daunting, but also thrilling, and standing here sharing this quiet moment with this kind, unassuming man who'd shown up like a minor miracle. Unexpectedly comforting, we stood in silence for a few moments, just looking out the window, lost in our own thoughts, yet somehow connected by the shared views, shared space. The silence wasn't awkward. It was companionable, filled with unspoken understanding. He finished his water, placing the empty glass carefully in the windowsill. "Well," he said, softly turning towards me, "I should probably let you get settled, or at least let you collapse on the nearest unopened box, right?" I nodded, feeling a strange reluctance to see him go. "Yes, thank y'all again." "Mark, seriously, you saved me anytime, Sarah." He smiled, his eyes crinkling slightly at the corners. "If ya need help tackling Mount unpacking, just knock. I'm usually around in the evening seat. Might just take you up on that." I say, trying to keep my tone light, casual, but no obligation. "Really consider it a standing offer," he replied. He walked towards the door, pausing with his hand and the knob. He turned back, his expression thoughtful, you know. "Sarah Habagan," his voice a little hesitant. "It's funny. I've seen you around the building for months, but," he trailed off, searching for the right words today, helping yo tucking it. "Feels like I'm actually meeting you for the first time." His honesty caught me off guard. It mirrored me own feelings exactly. The polite nods in the hallway felt like a lifetime. Agatha's interaction, born out of a simpler request for help, had somehow peeled back a layer, revealing something more genuine. "Journey." "I feel the same way, Mark," I admitted, my voice softer than I intended. "Nice." He held my gaze for a moment longer, a look of quiet understanding passing between us. It wasn't romantic, Newt, exactly, but it was intensely personal, a connection forged and shared effort. An unexpected conversation. It felt like standing on the edge of something new, a landscape I had anticipated exploring well. He saw again, finally, opening the door. "Welcomeito, the fifth-floor neighbor." He gave Asmal wave and stepped out into the hallway, closing the door gently behind him. I stood there for a long moment, the salons of the apartment settling around, no longer feeling empty, but filled with the echo of his presence, the warmth of his unexpected kindness, and the startling realization that sometimes Shop arrives in the most unassuming packs, shifting not just boxes, but perspectives too. The chaos of the move suddenly seemed less overwhelming, govdads by the quiet resonance. Off connection, I just made it, wasn't just about carrying boxes. It was about sharing a moment, a real moment in the midst of transition, and that felt like eighth. Most significant thing that had happened. All day I leaned back against the closed door. A slow smile spreading across my face. Maybe this new chapter wasn't just about a new apartment, maybe it was about opening doors, literally and figuratively. I looked around at the boxes, no longer seeing just a daunting task, but a space waiting to be filled, not just with belongings, but with new experiences, new connections. The afternoon light seemed softer now, less harsh, more inviting. I took a deep breath, air filled with the scent of cardboard dust and the faint lingering trace of sandalwood I picked up. The empty water glass Mark had left on Thuendalsel, the condensation cool against me palm. It felt like a tangible reminder of the unexpected turn the day had taken. Instead of tackling the unpacking damnly, I decided to just sit for a while, right there on the floor amidst boxes, and let the feelings settle. Feeling of gratitude, yes, but also something more complex, a sense of Bianzine. It's truly seen, perhaps for the first time in a very long time. It wasn't dramatic, no earth-shattering revelation, but a quiet, profound shift within Mark's offer to help further echoed in my mind. Just knock. It was a simple invitation, yet it felt significant. Would I knock? Maybe the thought wasn't frightening, just interesting, a possibility. For now, though, I just wanted to savor the unexpected warmth that had bloomed in the middle of moving. Dekusi hadn't just helped me carry boxes, he'd helped me carry a little bit of The emotional weight too, without even realizing it, and that I thought was Keats something the park. Outside was bathed in the golden glow of afternoon, and for the first time since Is moving truck pulled away, I felt a sense of peace, a quiet optimismo of what lay ahead in apartment. 5C Thieselins was broken only by the distance of the city and the gentle settling of my belongings in their new home. It felt like a beginning. A few days past I slowly chipped away at the mountain of boxes, transforming Thikowatic space into something resemblinga. Home photos found their places. On shelves, curtains softened the windows, and the aroma of coffee replaced thesmol of cardboard. Yet amidst these settling in the memory of Mark's help in that quiet connection we'd shared lingered. I saw him once or twice in the hallway, exchanged brief friendly greetings, but the easy camaraderie moving day seemed held in suspension. Wasted, just a one-off moment fueled by proximity and shared exertion, or waste there something more waiting beneath the surface. Evening wrestling with a flat-pack bookcase that seemed determined to diffuse himly. Frustration mounting, I found myself thinking of his offer. Just Naki hesitated. Was it imposing? Was I reading too much into a simple act of neighborly kindness? But the book assigned instructions might as well have been written in hieroglyphics, and I was dangerously close to kicking it. Taking a deep breath, I wiped my dusty hands on my jeans and walked across the small Undine to his door. For I knocked it softly. The door opened almost immediately, as if he'd been expecting. He was dressed casually in jeans and a soft gray t-shirt, holding a book, finger marking place those kind eyes registered mild surprise, then softened into a welcoming smile. Sarah, hi, everything okay? Hi, Mark. I fumbled, suddenly feeling awkward. Sorry to bother you, but I'm having a technical difficulty with furniture. A gestured vaguely back towards my apartment. That offer of help you Madados, it extend to deciphering Swedish diagrams, he chuckled, closing his book. Swedish diagrams are my specialty, or at least I can offer a second pair of hands and moral support. Lead the way back in my apartment. The offending bookcase lay in pieces on the floor like a modern art installation gone wrong. Mark surveyed scene with amusement. Ah, I see Thepra Blum. Step 4 is always the killer. Spent the next hour working together side by side. It was different this time, less about physical exertion and more about collaboration. There was laughterous. We misinterpreted diagrams' quiet satisfaction when pieces finally click a together. An easy conversation that flowed more freely than before. He asked about the photos I'd put up, genuine alenters in the stories behind them. He learned he was divorced, amicably so, and had a daughter in college on the West Coast. We discovered a shared love for old movies and a mutual dislike for cilantro. Small things perhaps, but they felt like building blocks, creating a more detailed picture of the person behind the polite neighbor facade. As we tightened the last screw, standing back, admire the now assembled bookcase. A comfortable silence fell between us. The apartment felt cozier now, lived in. The evening light casting a warm glow there, said, ready for all those Steinbeck navels and more. I smiled. Mark, thank you again. You're becoming my official apartment setup superhero. Happy to wield the Allen wrench of justice, he quipped. He lingered for a moment, his gaze drifting around room, taking it all in. You've made it look really nice in here. Sarah, feels like home. It's getting there, I agreed softly. The atmosphere shifted subtly. The sea camaraderie deepening, inner something quieter, more charged. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was palpable, a heightened awareness. Listen, he began, turning back to me, his expression serious but kind. I know this might be forward, but I enjoyed talking with youth other day, and tonight I was wondering if you might like to grab dinner sometime. Nothing fancy, maybe that Italian place down the street. My breath caught. It was unexpected, yet somehow not entirely surprising. The connection we'd felt, the easy conversation, the shared laughter. It hadn't just been in my head like that, Mark. I heard myself say, my voice steady despite the sudden flutter in my chest. I'd like that very much. A slow smile spread across his face, reaching his eyes. Great. How about Friday? Friday sounds perfect. He nodded, seemingly pleased. Okay, well, I'll let you back to admiring your bookcase, headed towards the door, pausing again just. Like before this time, he didn't say anything, just offered a warm, genuine smile before stepping. Out I stood there for a long moment after the door closed, at air humming with possibility. Dinner it wasn't just help with boxes or bookcases anymore. It was a deliberate test up towards something else, something gunk known, and instead of feeling anxious, I felt a sense of quiet excitement, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. It was the feeling of a page turning, graveling a new unwritten chapter. The bookcase stood solid and steady, a testament to shared effort, but it felt symbolic of something more, the careful collaborating construction of a new connection built on kindness, shared mints, and the courage to simply knock on a neighbor's door. The unexpected had happened again. Not with a bang, but with a quiet invitation.